All right, continuing with the review for the Unit 4 test. It says arcs for tangents and secants with exterior angles and points. Well, here we are told that the measure of the major arc is 170 degrees. The minor arc is 80 degrees. What's the measure of angle APF? You're still going to do this the same way. You're going to take the difference of the two arcs and divide by 2. They told us what the two arcs measures were, so let's see how they work this out. It's just like I told you. They're going to take the difference of the two arcs and they're going to divide that by 2. So what they've done here is plugged in the information they know. They said 170 minus 80 is 90. So they divide that by 2 and they find out that the angle is going to be 45 degrees. Now here we're given a couple of arcs, but I think it's maybe the arc we don't need. Let's see. They said EF, so I'll go from E to F, and then they've got A to F, which is 62. Well, I need to know AF, which they give me, but I also need to know ADE. All right, in order to figure out ADE, let's see what they do. Okay, they say if I take 360 and I add the two arcs together that I know, and I subtract those from 360, I'm going to find out the measure of ADE. So that's exactly what they're doing here. So they've plugged in the information that they knew, and they found out that the measure of arc ADE is going to be 160. So you come right here. Oh, goodness gracious. I thought my pen was clicked and it wasn't. So I come right here. I know that this is 160 degrees. I know AF is 62 degrees. So now you find the difference of these two. You divide by 2 and you're going to find out what the measure of the angle is. Now they use a lot of steps here because they're wanting to make sure that you see each step of the process. So it looks like they forgot to put a parentheses in here. There we go. So we know if we take the difference of those two arcs, we divide them by 2, we're going to get the measure of the angle. There you go. So 160 minus 62 is going to give me 98. I divide that by 2, I get 49 degrees. So that's going to be the measure of the angle. Now we have the arcs for intersecting secants. Guess what? It's going to work the same way. You're going to get the difference of the arcs, and then you're going to divide by 2. Now in this one, they said angle HPF is 30 degrees. They said this measure of this arc right here is 20 degrees. We're looking to find out what is the measure of this arc GE. Well, now first, let's see what we got to do here. Okay, we know if we take the difference of those two arcs, we can find the measure of the angle. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the information we know. See how they plugged in the angle of 30 degrees and they plugged in the arc HF. Okay, now what they did here was what I've told you before. They multiplied both sides by 2. So that made these guys go away because they just reduced to 1. 2 times 30 is going to give me 60. So now I'm going to add 20 to both sides, and I get the measure of arc GE is 80 degrees. So remember, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with a secant and a tangent, two tangents, or two secants. You're always going to use this same way to calculate the measure of an angle or to discover the measure of a missing arc. Okay, the other thing that we studied was the equation of a circle. So you have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That's your equation. Now, you're going to use that information to help you figure out the full equation of the circle. Now remember, HK is your center. H and K are your center. And then XY is your point on circle. Okay, now then, when you're new in the equation of a circle, you don't necessarily need to know xy unless you're having to figure out the length of the radius. Okay, so notice that they're not even going to talk about xy here. We just know HK is the center, so we're going to plug in the information we know. Maybe. There we go. We're plugging it in. Notice how they put H and K in parentheses. That's just in case they're negative numbers. In this situation, they're not, but if they are, you got to be careful. Then the radius is 3. So what they're going to do now is simplify. So there's your equation of your circle right there. Okay, now the other thing we did was we took the equation of a circle and we identified the center and the radius. Okay, so if you look right here, if I take this given equation that they gave me and I rewrite it, remember how we needed to put the parentheses around H and K? Well, this is why. Because H here is going to be a -2. Well, remember when you have two negatives, it's going to make a positive. Oh, and look how they said, okay, the square root of 64 is 8. Okay, so now they know the information that they need. So they say compare the above equation with the general equation for a circle. So it's going to imply that H is -2, K is 7, and R equals 8. So our center is going to be the coordinates, -2, 7, and the radius is 8 units. Now, they broke that down and they made it sound really hard, okay? But it's not that hard. You just look at the numbers and you figure out the information. And remember, you're always going to know that your coordinates H and K are opposite of whatever they are in the parentheses. So here you've got a +2, so your H is -2. Here you've got a -7, so your K is a +7. And then you get the square root of the, I guess it's the sum. You're going to get the square root of the sum, and that'll tell you what your radius is. Okay, then we also learned how to sketch the graph of a circle. Okay, so remember, we're always dealing with opposites here. So H is a +2, K is a +5. So I know my center is 2, 5. The square root of 9 is going to be 3, so I know I have a radius of 3. But let's see how they worked it out. Okay, they did exactly what I did. They said, oh, okay, the center is 2 and 5. We can see that just by looking here. Okay, so they plotted the center. And then they said the radius is 3 units because the square root of 9 is 3. And look how they drew this segment here. Now watch what happens. They went ahead and drew 4 segments and they said, hey, we know all the radii are going to be the same length, so that's why they drew the 4 segments. All they have to do now is connect the dots and they're going to have a circle. There you go. Okay, the equation of a circle given 3 points, because sometimes you don't know what the center is. You have to figure it out. So what you're going to do with those 3 points is go ahead and connect them to make a triangle. And then you're going to find the midpoints for each line segment. And remember, to find the midpoint, you're going to take the endpoints, add them together, divide by 2, figure out your midpoint. Then you're going to create a perpendicular bisector for each segment. There we go. Now look here, for AB, the perpendicular looks like I am given. Huh. Okay, that's how you're going to find out where your center is, because once you connect all of those, D is going to be your center. Okay, now let's go to this problem. It says, given 3 points on a circle, we can use the triangle and bisectors to locate its center. And you don't see a line for the bisector for AB because the y-axis is the bisector. So anyway, if you connect all those points, you see the center is D. Okay, now we're going to go over a review for the Unit 4 test, Part 2. It's kind of hard, Okay, it's not that the problem is hard, it's that looking at the picture is hard. Okay, they give you this huge picture with all these different circles and segments, and it's crazy, and then they give you the list of all this given information. Okay, this is what is on the Unit 4 Part 2 test. So what I'm going to do is take you through and kind of give you hints how to work each part. Now you'll see here that I took the big messy picture, and for Part A, B, C, D, and E, I just took out the parts that I needed. See, all the other segments and information's gone. I know to find Part A, FH, all I need is this information right here to find FH. So what you're going to have to study is the segments of tangent, secants, and chords. And look here how I went ahead and plugged in the information that I was given. And that information is going to help me find FH, segment FH, which is right here. Okay? But remember, for parts A, B, C, D, and E, you're going to need to study segments of tangents, secants, and chords. Now for part B, they want you to find AE. And if you look, right here is AE, and then here is EL. Okay? They gave you the whole segment. AL is 25 centimeters. So you're going to use that information, that given information, plus what you've already calculated, which is FH, to find out what the measure of segment AE is. Or you can use segment AO to help you find AE. But it's still in that same information, segments of tangents, secants, and chords. Now, you can go through and you can watch this video and pause it, and that way it can help you with the test to know how to do the calculations. Now, in part B, you found out what the measure of segment AE was. Now they want to find EL. Well, you know AL is 25, so there you go. You ought to be able to figure that one out. Now for part D, they want to know what is the measure of PO. So there again, you're still going to go through and read through that lesson and figure out how to work this problem. Okay? They want you to find out what PO is. So you're going to need to figure out what EP is. And you found out EL in part C, so that'll help you figure that out. So you're going to use all that information to help you figure out what PO is. Now for AG, you're still looking in the same lesson and figuring out what AG is. Now then, for FG, H, and I think that's an L and a J, you're going to be using this information. Now notice I've gone ahead and left parts of the circle that I've already figured out up here, and then I've added this other circle with this line right here. Okay? It says, look at your given information. What is KI in relation to circle M? I'm not looking for a value. I'm wanting you to tell me what is the name of segment KI when you look at circle M. Now for part G, it says, what arc does angle LNM represent? I mean intercept, not represent, intercept. What measures are you given? What theorem or corollary helps you solve for the measure of angle LNM? Okay, this is all important information. If you go back and you study the lesson, chords and arcs, and relate that to the questions that I've asked you right here, you should be able to find out the measure of angle LNM pretty easily. Now for H, I said this answer is found in your given information and the answer you calculated in part G. So you're going to use that information to help you find out the measure of arc LR. Arc KJ, Look at your given information, and based on that, you should be able to calculate this problem. So what you're going to do is you see what part of the circle I have drawn and all that information. You look at your given information and you fill in what's given. After you fill in the given, it'll help you figure out what KJ is. Now for part J, it says use given information and the answer to part I to calculate this answer. They want to know the arc measure of SH from here to here. Notice this is circle N, but it also involves information that you figured out about circle M. So be sure to take that all into consideration when figuring out the measure of arc SH. Now for part K, you're using the sum of the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees. You've got to remember that to figure out what the measure of angle NLM is. So it says review the given information to see if any degree measures are given for the angles or arcs related to angle LNM, to angle NML, and to angle LNLM. I'm looking to see where all these angles are. NLM. Okay, what kind of triangle? After you fill in all that information, you'll be able to identify triangle NML, what kind it is. And what does that tell you about how the angles are related to each other? That'll all help you answer that problem. Okay, for the measure of angle IJK, what do you know about the angles inscribed within a semicircle? Okay, so you're going to have to go back to inscribed angles and arcs, figure out what you know about angles inscribed in a semicircle, and that'll help you calculate the measure of angle IJK. For part M, it's the angle LKI. Now if you look for L and M, you go back to inscribed angles and arcs. What do you know about the measure of an inscribed angle? And look at past answers to help calculate arc LH. So not only are you using your given information, you're going to use information that you calculated in previous answers to help you figure out the measure of LKI. Okay, for BAQ, you've got BAQ. Look at given information in previous arc measure answers. And for, it looks like for problems NO, PQR, you're going to be looking at angles formed by secants and tangents. And that's going to help you calculate the measure of angle BAQ. Okay, we're still looking at that same section, angles formed by secants and tangents. It says, what's the measure of BKL? Again, you're going to look at given information and previous angle measure answers. Okay, it says find all the following measure. Oh, never mind. Why am I reading that? Silly lady. Okay, for part P, you're going to say the measure of angle LPF. So you've got LPF. You're still looking at angles formed by secants and tangents. You're going to look at given information and previous arc measure answers to help you figure out what the measure of that angle is. For part Q, still looking at angles formed by secants and tangents. You're also still looking at your given information and previous arc measures that you've calculated. For the measure of angle LAH, still looking at angles formed by secants and tangents. Still looking at given information and previous arc measure answers. And it looks like I gave you a little extra hint there. Look at part G. Look at the answer that you gave for part G, and that's going to help you figure out the information you need. Oh, and that was the end of our slideshow. I guess I didn't do part O, but, oh no, I did do part O. Oh, I don't know why I thought O come after R. I'm crazy. All right, so that's the end of the review. I hope y'all the best on this test. And remember, when you're doing the part 2, go through, look at the hints I gave you, and just pause the recording and use the hints I gave you to help you with the test. Oh, well, that's going to be it, and thanks for listening.